Come in. Oh, hi, nice to see you. Do have a seat. Well, you know, I'll just get this little church warden going. I had such pleasure last time showing you this little pipe smoking in Middle-earth, and he's pointing out, which I'd completely forgotten, that the Hobbit, I mean, obviously it starts very famously with in a hole in the ground, you know, they lived the Hobbit, and there's a description of Hobbit holes and hobbits, but the adventure, properly speaking, starts with Bilbo, which is rather moist tobacco is, with Bilbo standing rather contentedly on a sunny morning outside his front door, smoking a long pipe. And then along comes Gandalf. And so I just decided I'd go back and look at that passage. And what a pleasure it was. I've just forgotten how good the writing is, how many interesting things are going on. It's told with great zest. It's told with, you can see the lexicographer. There's lots of plays about the meanings of words, and of course there's this wonderful play on how many different ways in which we use the phrase good morning to mean a whole series of different things, and that's part of the fun of it. Anyway, I thought you might just enjoy hearing that opening episode. Now, I've got a little edition of The Hobbit, which we had in the family for ages. It's green with the black dragon on the back, and unfortunately I can't find it. But I do have, let me just show you this before I read to you. This is the magnificent edition of The Hobbit. Smaug the Magnificent in himself, illustrated by Alan Lee. But it has the Tolkien map, of course. And also rather nicely when you take the dust jacket off, it's got that rather beautiful dragon there. So that's the edition I'm reading from. So if you're sitting comfortably, I'll begin. By some curious chance, one morning long ago, in the quiet of the world, when there was less noise and more green, and hobbits were still numerous and prosperous, Bilbo Baggins was standing at his door after breakfast, smoking an enormous, long, wooden pipe that reached nearly down to his woolly toes, neatly brushed. Gandalf came by. Gandalf! If you had heard only a quarter of what I've heard about him, and I've only heard very little of what there is to hear, you would be prepared for any sort of remarkable tale. Tales and adventures sprouted up all over the place, wherever he went, in the most extraordinary fashion. He had not been down that way under the hill for ages and ages, not since his friend the old Took died, in fact, and the hobbits had almost forgotten what he looked like. He had been away over the hill and across the water on business of his own, since they were all small hobbit boys and hobbit girls. All that the unsuspecting Bilbo saw that morning was an old man with a staff. He had a tall pointed blue hat, a long grey cloak, a silver scarf over which his long white beard hung down below his waist, and his immense black boots. "Good morning," said Bilbo, and he meant it. The sun was shining and the grass was very green. But Gandalf looked at him from under long bushy eyebrows that stuck out further than the brim of his shady hat. "What do you mean?" he said. "Do you wish me a good morning? Or mean that it is a good morning whether I want it or not? Or that you feel good this morning? Or indeed that it's a morning to be good on?" "All of them at once," said Bilbo. "And a very fine morning for a pipe and tobacco out of doors, into the bargain. If you have a pipe with you, take it down and have a fill of mine. There's no hurry, we've all the day before us." And Bilbo sat down on a seat by his door, crossed his legs, and blew out a beautiful grey smoke ring that sailed up into the air without breaking and floated away over the hill. I wonder if I can do the same. Well, one or two anyway. Very pretty, said Gandalf, but I've no time to blow smoke rings this morning. I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure that I'm arranging. It's very difficult to find anyone. Oh, I should think so in these parts, where we're plain quiet folk and have no use for adventures. Nasty, disturbing, uncomfortable things make you late for dinner. Can't think what anybody sees in them. And now Mr. Baggins stuck one thumb behind his braces and blew out another, even bigger smoke ring. Then he took out his morning letters and began to read, pretending to take no more notice of the old man. He had decided that it was not quite his sort and wanted him to go away. But the old man did not move. He stood leaning on his stick and gazing at the Hobbit without saying anything, till Bilbo got quite uncomfortable and even a little cross. "Good morning," he said at last. "We don't want any adventures here, thank you. You might try over the hill or across the water." By this he meant that the conversation was at an end. "What a lot of things you do use good morning for," said Gandalf. "Now you mean that you want to get rid of me, and that it won't be good until I move off." Not at all, my dear sir. Let me see. I don't think I know your name." Yes, my dear sir. And I do know your name, Mr. Bilbo Baggins. And you do know my name, though you don't remember that I belong to it. I am Gandalf, and Gandalf means me. To think that I should have lived to be good-morninged by Belladonna Took's son as if I was selling buttons at the door. Gandalf! Good gracious me, not the wandering wizard that gave old Took a pair of magic diamond studs that fastened themselves and never came undone till ordered. Not the fellow who used to tell such wonderful tales at parties about dragons and goblins and giants and the rescue of princesses and the unexpected luck of widows' sons. Not the man who used to make such particularly excellent fireworks. I remember those. Old Took used to have them on a midsummer's eve. Splendid. They used to go up like great lilies and snapdragons and laburnums of fire and hang in the twilight all evening. You will notice already that Mr. Baggins was not quite so prosy as he liked to believe. Also that he was very fond of flowers. Dear me, he went on. Not that Gandalf was responsible for so many quiet lads and lasses going off into the blue for mad adventures. Anything from climbing trees to visiting elves, or sailing in ships, sailing to other shores. Bless me, life used to be quite you used to upset things badly in these parts once upon a time. I beg your pardon, but I had no idea you were still in business. Where else should I be? Said the wizard. All the same, I'm pleased to find you remember something about me. You seem to remember my fireworks kindly, at any rate, and that is not without hope. Indeed, for your old grandfather Took's sake, and for the sake of poor Belladonna, I will give you what you asked for. I beg your pardon, I haven't asked for anything. Yes, you have, twice now. My pardon. I give it to you. In fact, I will go so far as to send you on this adventure. Very amusing for me, very good for you, and profitable too, very likely, if you ever get over it. It's just wonderful, you know. I mean, it's very simple, it's good children's writing, but there's so much attention to everything and the wonderful ways in which Gandalf takes literally what Bilbo means metaphorically, or expands on all the different ways in which Bilbo uses good morning. And the way, just having been told how respectable and middle-aged and predictable Bilbo Baggins and all the Bagginses of Bag End are, we suddenly realise when he reaches into his memory of childhood, these wonderful fireworks, that there is, as Tolkien rather nicely puts it, he's not so prosy as he likes to think he is. There's a poetic spirit in him. And so the adventure begins. And I remember with what a thrill I first heard those words being read to me by my father when I was really quite a small boy. And the thrill I had when I'd learnt well enough to read them for myself later. And I read it as a child with all that a child would bring to it. But now, you know, I read it as a man, probably past his middle age. But now I cherish the fact that this is an old man sending a middle-aged man on an unexpected adventure. That both the Bilbo adventure and the longer Frodo adventure come to them, not, you know, in the first flush of youth, but just when they and their neighbours think they're going to settle down to a dull and predictable routine, and suddenly the adventure comes. And I think that's very exciting for those of us who are middle-aged to consider that adventures might happen. In fact, I regard my own, particularly my own 50s and 60s, as a series of unexpected adventures arising from my poetry being read more widely and my going off on trips and to give talks and to write more poetry. It's all been a bit of an adventure. Anyway, I shan't say, it's actually not the morning now anyway, I shan't say good morning to you in any of the senses that Bilbo used it, but I will say thanks for dropping by, and I hope you enjoyed and at least indulge me in that little dip back into my memory of this wonderful book. Cheers.